feelings about it. I watched one video of it taking off. First thing, the space shuttle that they created, they can make it more interesting because it looks a little inappropriate. I don't know if you saw it that way. When I saw it, I was like, what? It reminds me of like an Austin Powers film.
I'm
when
seeing
I
that now.
when you see it. It reminds me of something Austin Powers would do going into the
Got
most inappropriate section
a
ever.
nice rounded top.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone, to another great episode of Banter on the Rocks. I have myself, Tim, here today, as well as John, back here for another week. Today is Monday, April 14th. So, just so you know, all of our takes come from today and behind us. Before we get started, though, we wanted to remind all of our viewers that in the description of each episode, we have our timeline and everything that we discuss during the episode. So if you're here just for a couple topics of banter or things that we discuss, or if you want to view the whole thing and just kind of skip throughout, you can use that timeline to skip ahead how you choose. It's a great
Mhm.
feature, something that you want to reference throughout, and something that you're looking forward to in each episode. So it's definitely there for you guys to utilize. And then on today's topic, those the things that we will be discussing are, of course, our banter takes to start off with, NBA playoff preview, some NIL news, and then we got sounds of banter with Coachella happening over this past weekend. The Blue Origin space, I don't know, capsule, whatever we want to call it,
Yeah.
spaceship that was launched today, and we'll certainly discuss our thoughts on that and a whole lot more as well. Before we get going here, though, we of course want to stop and talk about our brand ambassadorship. We are brand ambassadors for Find the Good brand. Find the Good is focused on finding that good and building a community of people who want to help find the good in each and every day. For all purchases, Find the Good gives back 10% to Mental Health of America organization. And when you order, be sure to use our promo code, which is Banter805, and you'll receive 10% back on your purchase. That's 10% for you and 10% for mental health. Remember, Banter805 for that 10%. The mission for Find the Good is simple. Find the Good is here to help you get through those bad days, the breakups, the ups and downs, and whatever else stands between you and a smile on your face. We all love seeing smiles. We smile on here
Yeah.
each and every week, John. Nothing beats it. And repping the swag
Nice.
today as well. And next, of course, going to dive into our banter drinks of the week. Going back, repping the Banter Cup
Nice.
once again. Got tequila and strawberry lemonade today.
Okay, nice.
Warm day. We've had a warm weekend. Allergies are certainly kicking right now. But yeah, much needed tequila. It's a good pick me up.
It is.
Cures all.
Nice, nice. I'm doing somewhat the same, not strawberry juice, but fresh strawberries. We were at the farmer's market on Saturday, so had a
There you
few
go.
strawberries left over, so blended it with a little bit of tequila as well. So it's been cold here for some reason today. It was raining a bit. Or
Wow.
not raining,
Okay.
it's drizzling, you could say. So weird weather. Uh,
Yeah.
after that little heat we just had. So um, always interesting, this weather.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's been really warm, but the fog was rolling in over the mountains from the ocean, so I
Okay.
can tell that that's on our way here too. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm rocking the
Nice.
sweater. Got cold at the end of the
Getting prepped.
day. Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So we'll get started and we'll go into our banter takes. As always, our little disclaimer before we go through with our banter takes. These are takes that we share with each other. We don't know what they are ahead of time. And these are takes we're going to roll with until they get proven right, wrong. Um, and like I say, when they get proven wrong, we will admit to it and go down with it. But my first take, James Bond has never been rated R, but with a new film set for 2027, it's time. Um, I totally agree with this. You know, the James Bond movies a are an amazing franchise, you know, and they've been a long-standing franchise because it's gone on since I want to say like 60s, 70s, you know, and it's always been different Bonds after maybe 10 to 15 years and great movies, great action, and I think the way things are going now with cinema, it's time to make one a little gorier, make it a little bit more R-rated because there's so much you could do with that type of spy movie. It'd be great, and with Daniel Craig's Bond sort of ending with the last James Bond that came out a few years ago, you know, bringing someone new and starting something a little different. I think there's going to be a lot of people that hate this take because it's sort of going away from what James Bond was, but I think there's going to be a lot of people that love it because it's something new, something different, and it's just more action. I think a lot of these movies that have gone more rated R have done great things. You know, I'm hearing we talked about it I think it was last week when we were talking about the new Jurassic World that they're coming out with. Rumor has it it's going to be maybe a rated R movie because of the gore, and I think that's what people are going to be so excited about and looking forward to. So, um, I I want to see it rated R. Like you say, if it doesn't work, go back to what you're good at, you know, see what the criticism is, but I don't think it's a bad idea. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm all for it. We've had this discussion, on Jurassic Park, Star Wars, if they did a Darth
Yeah.
Vader focused film. I think that it's a great idea and it's something that, adults might be ready for. We grew up on these
Yeah.
movies, of course, and you know, people older than us grew up on them too. So, and with James Bond in particular, it kind of surprised me. I don't know why. I just never really thought about it, but just reading that there had never been a rated R film that was James Bond
Mhm.
before. So interesting. Caught me by surprise, but I'd say it's much needed. And another thing that I
Mhm.
think about too is with rated R films, obviously there's going to be more gore and,
Mhm.
things like that. It makes me think about, the villain in these films.
Mhm.
And I feel like if it's like extra gory or
Mhm.
violent, it's going to make me hate that villain even more and make me want to
It
watch the
will.
film more. So, it's just that kind of messed up sense of
It is.
this guy or woman is messing shit up and it's
Mhm.
time to get back. So
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it would
Yeah.
be much needed. And it, they don't always have to be more family friendly in a way.
Mhm.
This is James Bond. It's not, it's you
Mhm.
go to watch it for action, and I
Yeah.
feel like you do a lot of that with Star Wars or Jurassic
Mhm.
Park because you're freaked out with the T-Rex or something.
Yeah.
It's what the films are all about. Let's start seeing it and let's make it a little bit of a trend. I feel like it's a trend certainly on this show so far, John.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, and you bring up a lot of good points. You know, it's never been done. Um, you know, it's not meant to be a kid or a family movie. James Bond in general, you know, it's an adult movie, so why not make it rated R? You know, and I don't think it takes much more to make it just a little bit more extra. You know, it's gonna be more cuss language. It's gonna be James Bond is this, you know, stud, you know, and he always gets the lady, so it's gonna be more of those type of scenes. And like you mentioned, the villain too, it's gonna be more intense and it's gonna make us hate this villain a lot more. So I think there isn't anything wrong doing that because I'm not gonna take my 4-year-old, 5-year-old to go watch a James Bond movie in theaters. That's you know, a date night with the wifey, you know, so
Mhm.
it's like why not make it rated R with you know, intended for that audience. Um, but I also know why they don't do it because I think historically rated R movies have never made as much money. And when you think about these movie companies, these franchises, it's about making money. But I think this could be one that sort of breaks through that threshold of a rated R movie not being successful. I think it will still be successful because everybody that's a fan of it will go watch it.
For sure. And I feel like nowadays, I think that risk is more worthwhile. I too read that same exact, what you're mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
An article had mentioned the same exact sentiment of, you're not getting as broad of an audience, with a rated
Hmm.
R film at times. But quite frankly, these days, John, if you just turn on the news, you're going to get like NC-17 stuff sometimes, it's
It
so,
is.
what's an R-rated film at that point,
Hmm.
when mainstream media is putting out a whole lot, anyways. And I feel like in a way, you're right. Like a 5-year-old, stuff like that. But if you have like a young teen,
Hmm.
I feel like parents these days, are more inclined
Yeah.
to bring their child, to a film
Hmm.
like that, especially if it's stuff that you've bonded over before,
Hmm.
like, you know, Star Wars goes this
Yeah.
direction, Jurassic Park goes this direction, James
Yeah.
Bond, same thing. It's just one of
Yeah.
those things that, screw the rating,
Yeah.
it's James Bond. Let's go watch. So
Yeah, no, for sure. And you could also think about it. Look at what a lot of these youth are playing for video games. Call of Duty, that's
yeah.
already, and all the chatting that happens in that, the language. They could go to a James Bond movie and they probably heard a lot more worse in their chat on, you know, Call of Duty, in their Fortnite chats. The new
Yep.
game that I hear is going to be intense with the chat feature is Mario Kart with the Wii,
Oh, yeah, the free roam.
that
Yeah.
that's gonna be, oh my gosh, these kids that play it, because 5, 10-year-olds play it, between that range, they're gonna be
Yeah,
playing with adults that are gonna be using probably the most inappropriate language, if Nintendo does what Xbox does and records chats, man, that's gonna be crazy to hear back and some of that, but it's like they're already hearing so much worse than what a rated R movie could be of James Bond.
for sure. Yeah, no, and you nailed it. I mean, it's all out there in gaming. Grand Theft
Hmm.
Auto is another one that comes to mind. I
Yeah.
mean, going to some clubs in that in
Yeah.
that
Oh
game,
yeah.
what's James Bond, to have, some scenes there. So yeah, you nailed it. It's everybody's exposed to stuff like that these days.
Hmm.
It's you can shield it as much as you can, but games like even Mario Kart aren't even safe.
Yeah.
Roblox included would probably be another one that's like
Yeah.
some of those games get crazy.
Hmm.
The chat features are insane. So yeah, I think that's why the running rumor of everybody's freaked out about their Xbox party chats.
Yeah.
Because people know what wild stuff goes on in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no,
mm,
for sure. So, yeah, we'll see. I think it's a good idea. I think if it works, it'll be a good trend for other movies to start sort of testing that rated R movie, go a little bit more darker, more inappropriate language. That makes it more intense. So, we'll see.
yeah, for sure. And I'm also curious to see. I don't think they've announced who the next Bond is, right? So
No.
they've narrowed it down to like maybe I don't know 5 or 10, right?
Yeah, there's a
Possibilities.
handful of people, and I think a lot of them would be good. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I think I'm on Idris Elba as the leading candidate. I heard his
it'll
name
be
long
badass.
ago too, so that'd be
Yeah.
interesting. But
Yep. Going from The Office
yeah.
to this. Yeah.
Hey, Steve Carell.
You're right. Yeah,
Imagine.
there you go. That'd be hilarious. Um, but yeah, no, interesting stuff there. And John has now sent over my take. Mike White, creator of White Lotus, is one of the greatest writers of this generation, even with the third season of White Lotus being a letdown by some people. I've heard a ton about White Lotus, and shame
Mhm.
on me, I haven't watched a ton of it, but I know that any writer that can, I guess, be this dedicated, have continuous seasons, and still garner this much popularity, you have a good thing going for him.
Mhm.
It's I don't know if he's involved in too much else. I'll certainly do some research here right now, John. But
Mhm.
is there with even with White Lotus being a letdown, was there any key like, factors that made it kind of a letdown for some?
I think it was the story. I don't think many people felt like it was slow because I did watch it. I'm a big White Lotus fan. Been watching since season one.
Hmm.
I will say I enjoyed the third season. It was, I would say, a little slow to start out with, and then, but I enjoyed the story after. I enjoyed the whole series this season. Um, so I think that's where people are sort of like hating on it because it wasn't what the first two seasons were. But I heard some, I heard him on a podcast, where it's about White Lotus, sort of reviewing it, and him sort of sharing that what he's creating is an open world, and that's what I think is really cool about this because if you've been watching since season one, there's a lot of characters that return that you didn't really think were going to come back, and it's all sort of intertwined. So he's making this open world type show, which for me it's so interesting and so fascinating because it's almost like with video games, the MMO type video games, the open world of Fallout, Dragon Age, uh, you know, uh, Elder Scrolls. There's so many games that are like that where the story could go in so many different ways, and I think that's what Mike White has done with the White Lotus, and I think his name's come up a lot more recently, but this guy for me, he's been around for so long, so one of the he was on School of Rock. He wrote that one too. Great
Hmm.
movie. The one that when I looked up that I was surprised he was a co-writer for, Nacho Libre. For me, classic movie, amazing movie, and
Uh-huh.
just him making that movie, I'm like, man, that's amazing. And then Emoji Movie, he did a screenplay, Pitch Perfect, same thing. Um, Despicable Me 4, I haven't seen that one, so I don't know how great it is, but he was a writer for that. So, but his TV show, he's done amazing with The White Lotus. I've enjoyed it. Like I said, there's a lot of people that are hating on this last season. I thought it was great. I really appreciate the story, the cinematography, and just how crazy it is because when I watched it this last season, I was like, man, these are the conversations when you go out to a resort. It's sort of what you see from some people, and you're like, you start having those imaginations, like, what are they doing when they leave the resort? You
Right.
see three friends who are just getting drunk, and then what are they actually doing during their time when they're like leaving? And this show sort of shows it. They're talking shit about each other. When one friend leaves, they're getting drunk, doing some scandalous stuff, and it's like, man, it's those imaginations sometimes when you're just out on vacation.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I just looked him up and his face is super recognizable.
Yeah.
And yeah, School of Rock certainly hits home, Nacho Libre. The dude's had a tremendous, rap sheet
Hmm.
behind him. And, this is gonna hopefully spark maybe a new trend, like you said, with an open world concept of filming. Besides like reality TV, I feel like you just don't really have that. And
Hmm.
it's incredible and it brings back like repeat,
Yeah.
actors
Yeah.
and everything back to the film. So or back to the show. I think it's an awesome idea. I do need to get on this trend and watch it from season 1 to 3. But again, for somebody who hasn't, shame on me, like I said, watched too much of it. I've heard a ton, and
Hmm.
people are just like absolutely glued to it. So,
Hmm.
yeah, he's definitely got a great product, obviously, and
Yeah.
it's no figure, with what he's done in the past. I think
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And you make a good point because, like you say, the open world is sort of, you don't see anything like this other than in reality TV. And he, eh, if you watch Survivor, he was on Survivor, one of the best characters during that Survivor season. I don't know
Okay.
if you like if you watch clips, there's clips of him at a retreat when they win, and everybody, there's a note that comes out that there's an idol somewhere hidden. This guy's just hanging out with his drinks, like barely looking, like, oh, let's look for the idol while he's just getting drunk, drinking. I think it was wine, and it's just
Yep.
hilarious. And like I say, he's a big Survivor fan, and I think him going to that experiencing Survivor probably sort of sparked this idea of the White Lotus because, like I say, White Lotus is always in like a tropical island. It was Hawaii, went to Italy, now Thailand, and it's
Hmm.
sort of like you mentioned, it's reality TV in a fiction. TV show, which I think it's an
Mhm.
awesome idea. I think, yeah, if movies could start doing something like that, where you create this new movie, but it's an open world movie where the first three movies are going to be very different and then eventually come together, and it's something creative, it's going to be awesome because it's, you could say it's like the comic book trend. He's creating his own comic books of this White Lotus scandals, murder, drama happening in resorts. And hey, if he goes to some sort of resort in a Spanish speaking country, like, man, hey, I'll be a backup, an extra, I'll be a dead body in that
There you
TV
go.
show. I don't mind
Yeah,
it.
right. Don't breathe. 30 seconds, Sean.
I could do it. I could do that.
There you go. Yeah, no, that'd be badass. Just be an extra
Uh,
for that.
yeah.
Yeah, small little side note here on White Lotus too. Walter Goggins. I read an article that unfortunately he lost his wife, I
Hmm.
believe, and he went to Thailand to seek, just
Yeah.
to get away, I think. And then in this show, doesn't his character kind of do the same exact
Hmm.
thing? So he can kind of almost really relate to that
Yeah.
role, um, which probably, made his role in particular,
Hmm.
more phenomenal because I'm sure you really got into his feels with it.
Yeah,
So
he did.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, it's not awesome, but it's for a role like that, I think it's
Yeah.
great that you can play something and make it more significant than what the
Hmm.
role was even made out to be. So, yeah, no, I've heard phenomenal things about
Yeah.
Walter Goggins and the role he played.
Yeah, no, the role he played, I think he did awesome. I think there were some people criticizing him. I thought he did
Mm,
amazing in it. And yeah, I heard that too. And it's almost like that full circle moment where, he had this tragedy that happened. He went to Thailand, he learned, he grew from it, and now his character in the show is sort of doing the same thing, and I'm not going to give spoilers, but it's crazy towards the end, and how it comes full circle, and for his character. But yeah, I like the entire series. Like I said, there's some jaw-dropping moments in this season three. Um, I I didn't know, and this sort of goes to another question and topic. Arnold Schwarzenegger's son is in the show, Patrick
oh yeah.
Schwarzenegger.
Uh-huh.
And I'll say that guy's a good actor. I enjoyed him in this show.
Great.
We could talk nepotism, nepo baby, um, but I think he probably did earn this role, and he blew it out of the park. I think he did great. I think he's going to get a lot more opportunities, and it's sort of that question, like, is it always nepotism? Like, is it? Because we've talked about it a lot with LeBron. We've talked about it with Bronny. And it just makes me think, like, some of these actors, and I like how they sort of don't let it get to them, because I don't think he let all this talk get to him, and he did great. And now people do recognize that it isn't because he's, a Schwarzenegger. It's because he's a great actor. That's why they picked him. That's why Mike White cast him. And I, I think it's great. I still think there might be a little bit to it, but I think he earned it. He did well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It kind of intertwines with what we talked about last week with, this new generation of, you know, children of
Hmm.
NBA players, for
Yeah.
example, coming up into the league or
Hmm.
being really, pronounced and well-known college
Yeah.
basketball players, at this point in time. I think it's just growing up around that environment and then having that level of professionalism.
Hmm.
And then, of course, money
Yeah.
helps unlock, a lot more in
Hmm.
opportunity. And obviously there's a lot to it where you have to take it seriously.
Hmm.
And if Patrick Schwarzenegger goes and absolutely kills it in a role like this,
Hmm.
well deserved.
Yeah.
I'm sure, like you said, I'm sure that he had the same opportunity as everybody else trying out for that role, and
Hmm.
clearly he made it out to be the best decision. Now, on the other
Yeah.
hand, if he would have absolutely bombed, then it's like, oh yeah, you're not going to hear the end of it, and
Yeah.
you're big Nepo baby.
Yeah.
But that's it. So yeah, and I actually saw a clip of him. He was on Fallon,
Oh
I
yeah.
believe,
I think
either
I could.
today or over the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was making a protein shake, and it was pretty funny. The dude just kept going with the scoops,
Yeah.
yeah, protein.
Yeah.
But yeah, he seems funny. Seems
Hmm.
outgoing. Doesn't seem conceited. About who he is.
Hmm.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that whole thing, though, John? Like, do you feel like well deserved, or are you like, nah, this is Nepo?
I think it's well deserved. Like we talk about it a lot. We talk about how some of these actors, athletes maybe get a little bit too much because of who their parents are, that nepo baby talk. But like you mentioned and we sort of talked about today, he showed that it isn't really just all his name. It is his talent. It is his acting, you know. I hate to always bring up Bronny James, but like that's sort of the example right now of someone we all sort of didn't see it, see his skill that he could be a great NBA player at the moment, from
Hmm.
college. Because I don't even think in college he was averaging like 10, he was below 10 points per game.
Like five or
Yeah.
six. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I know he went through a lot with it, his heart issue that happened. So it was like, but then making it to the NBA, being drafted in the second round when, I don't, I believe he probably wasn't a second round draft pick. He should have been undrafted, if anything. And he hasn't really shown anything in the NBA. So that's sort of where what's always going to be behind him is this is nepotism. You're here because of your dad. You're here because of LeBron, whereas, Patrick right now, it's sort of like you maybe got your foot in the door because of your dad, because of your name, but you acted, you showed you showed the ability and that you probably could do well. So he gave you the opportunity and you killed it. So now it's not nepotism, it's you earned it. You are a great actor. Whereas like if he like you mentioned, if he did bad, he wouldn't live it down. He might not be getting big roles anymore, without his dad financing the movie, So
Mhm.
that's sort of where I think, we've talked about it. It's if you're going into Hollywood, you're going into sports. I think it's more Hollywood. You're gonna have to compete with this because every big actor right now, their kids are trying to get into acting because you make money. It's a big career. People love it. Um, and you're gonna have to fight through some of those hurdles. But if you can get through those hurdles and you are a great actor, you're gonna come out successful. So if it's really your passion, keep on trying because I think eventually those unknowns will break through. There's a lot of unknowns right now that are big actors.
For sure. Yeah. And obviously with the name, the last name of, whoever
Hmm.
your parent is, it brings a lot of attention,
Yeah.
as well. There was a lot of talk about Patrick Schwarzenegger in this season of White Lotus before White Lotus was even debuted. So,
Yeah.
it was already bringing attention to it. And, that can be a good thing too for, you know, the show or film
Hmm.
altogether and, bring a lot more eyes to it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you got it, go get it. Other occasions, Bronny, I don't know, probably step it up a bit more here and there.
Yeah.
Also doesn't help though with going back to the Bronny thing. I know we talk about him a lot. It doesn't help like when Sports Center or ESPN is posting your, you're dribbling the ball through your legs in a game. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's definitely rage clicks that they're
Hmm.
looking for. I
Yeah.
think it's very evident, but I just feel like it doesn't help what Bronny's trying to create. Because Bronny,
Mhm.
I give him props.
Yeah.
He's not in the news.
Hmm.
It seems like he's focused and does his own
Hmm.
thing, and
Yeah.
it seems like LeBron, raised in Savannah, raised their kids well. So,
Yeah.
it's great and everything. But again, yeah, I just think that there's just a lot of noise around it,
Hmm.
unwanted attention.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I say, I hope Bronny could prove us wrong. I hope I don't know if he'll become his dad's type of level of a player, but if he becomes a good,
Mhm.
solid, player in the NBA, great for him. Because yeah, I think he was raised great. He's not letting this noise get to him. He's working hard on his game, so we'll see it, but we know, and like I said, we'll sort of talk college in a bit. You build character in college sports if you're not a superstar. So I think he probably needed a few more years in college before making this jump, but he made it earlier, so now he has to jump a lot more hurdles, like we've talked about. So
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it's what he's got to do. But if he turns into like a Lou Williams,
yeah,
as repeat six man of the year, something like that,
yeah.
I think that's a
I,
hell of a career.
Yeah,
That's it.
I think that's one of the better careers that we've seen an ex NBA player's kiddo do. I think Steph is the only superstar from, his dad, Del Curry, who was a great player.
Right.
Steph
Yeah.
is a superstar. So,
Yeah. Seth has been okay as a,
yeah.
like a bench role player. Had some good days at Duke, but
Yeah.
yeah, nothing like
Yeah.
Steph. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, those are
Yeah.
our banter takes and sort of talking, you're talking Bronny NBA playoff preview. It's about to start. So we have our playing game starting Tuesday. I know our teams, Tim, had a great battle last game of the
Son of
season.
a.
Uh, Draymond, I saw that play Draymond try to get that foul, sort of maybe hurt your guys' chances to winning.
Yep.
But plays in the West, Kings versus Mavericks, Warriors versus Grizzlies, and then in the East, Bulls versus Heat, Magic versus Hawks. Um, like I say, the 9-10, it's winner moves on to faces the loser of the 7-8. Um, and we can start with those two, the four playing games, Tim.
Mhm.
And we can start with your Warriors. How do you think your Warriors are going to do against Memphis?
We're 0-3 in playing games. It's time to change it. Draymond talked about it in the presser as well after the loss to the Clippers, how we lost our way into this. That, BS three by Harrison Barnes with the Spurs. That was a brutal dagger in the freaking heart when we were just planning on winning all of these out. And
Yeah.
of course, we're losing in heartbreaking fashion. That's the Warriors' way. But here we are. In
Hmm.
the Grizzlies fired their head coach earlier this season.
Hmm.
John Morant attracts attention. We'll leave it at
Yes.
that. Um, they're a good team though. Jaren
Hmm.
Jackson's very good. John Morant's obviously a stud. Desmond Bane's incredible.
Hmm.
But I think this Warriors team is different than what we've seen in the past. I
Hmm.
think that, playing Warriors games, we've had Steph trying to really hold it down. We've had, a young Jordan Poole in the
Hmm.
past. Clay, he was aging at that point. But now the addition of Jimmy Butler, what
Hmm.
Brandon Podjemski has turned into, uh, it's just incredible. I just think that we have a
Hmm.
much more formidable team. And I think that we're going to be dangerous. I don't mean that as just being a Warriors fan.
Yeah.
We are a dangerous um, seventh seed here in this playoff, and I'm excited for it. Steph has played out of his mind, a lot of
Yeah.
this season, and we just need a whole lot of that, coming up here against the
Hmm.
Grizzlies because that's a really good team, and we need to hold
Yeah.
it down. But it also gives me promise for following years. But this year in general, I do think that we are going to win. I think that's a very winnable game for us. But what do you think, John?
Yeah, I see the Warriors winning this. I think they just have a more complete, or they have a better bench. I think your guys' role players are a lot better than previous years. Jimmy Butler edition. I'm curious to see what Jimmy we see in these playoffs because he has his good years, he has his bad years. Um, Pods, I think he's stepped it up the last few weeks of the season,
Hmm.
scoring. And then Steph, like I said, you can never count out Steph. So, and then the Grizzlies, I think that negative attention with John Morant is sort of what's going to hurt them against the Warriors. So I think Warriors will take this one. I'm excited to see what they do. Um, but like I said, I like the Grizzlies. They have a solid team, but I think Warriors just have that experience and more of that confidence and not that negative t attention. And also, I think the last game they played is when some of the controversy with John Morant came around.
Yep,
What he did towards the Warriors bench. So,
the rifle.
The Warriors aren't forgetting that, so they're gonna come out
No.
swinging, and I don't think they're gonna let them get through.
Right. Yeah, and I think it was directed at Buddy Hield of all people. Like,
Yeah.
he's a good guy. Like, what are you doing? It was
Yeah.
just it was very odd. His new celebration, I guess he's turned it into some type of grenade or something. And I think his words are he's gonna keep doing it until they tell him no. So,
Hmm.
you know, props to him for going to the
Yeah.
next thing. But you'll see. And then one last little point here on the Warriors is
Hmm.
Kaminga, it didn't get any minutes last game. I do hope that we see a bit more of him,
Hmm.
in this game. I think he can be a difference maker. We've held him to such high value. Like,
Hmm.
I think the Warriors literally tried to formulate trades around not giving him up.
Yeah.
So let's use him. I just
Hmm.
think he could be definitely worth our while, and especially in crunch time and fresh legs. So
Yeah.
but he's battled injuries too, so I will say
Yeah.
that. But hopefully he's fresh and ready to go. Now on to keeping out west here, John. We have the Kings and we have the Mavs. The Kings are
Hmm.
not what anybody thought they were going to.
Hmm.
It's like a completely different team than what
It is.
started with the firing of their head coach Mike
Yeah.
Brown, which was the first jaw-dropping
Yeah.
firing
Move.
of the year. I
Yeah.
can't believe that doesn't even seem like this year, in my opinion. It
Nah.
just seems so long ago. And then obviously De'Aaron Fox being traded,
Hmm.
and that team is just a different look. And that leads with all that sentiment being said here, John. I think it would be hilarious. And I think that it would maybe tune in a lot more viewers if the Mavs win in advance and
Hmm.
maybe get a good decent run at this after the fire Nico chance and
Yeah.
everything that's gone on there. But uh, to be honest with you, I'd like to go Kings, but for the hell of it, I'm just going to go Mavs for this one.
Yeah.
Say why
It,
not? What do you think?
yeah, I'm thinking the same. I Kings, like I said, Sabonis, he's a solid player. They have a good roster, but they just haven't been able to put it together cleanly, And in a one game series, I could see them taking it, but the Mavs have kept in it with all their injury woes, with losing Luca, AD getting hurt the first game as a Maverick, but coming back and still being a superstar. I could see them winning, and they have this determination to win. So, um, I I I want to go Mavs for some reason. I think they're gonna win it. Um, but then I don't know if they'll get past the Grizzlies because, like I say, the Grizzlies losing, they're gonna be facing whoever wins, Kings, Mavs. And then I think Grizzlies still get through. But then seeing Grizzlies versus the Thunder, that'd be interesting.
That'd be a heck of
Ja
a
versus
matchup.
Shea, that'd be that'd be good.
Yep. Yeah, no, pretty, athletic, similar players in a
Yeah.
way. Except Jaw has bunny hops a little bit
Yeah.
more than Shay does. But yeah, that would be really interesting too, just that build up. But
Hmm.
yeah, for some reason, I want to go Mavs for it. AD's healthy.
Hmm.
And, I think that could be a big difference maker as well.
Yeah.
He's going to be a tough matchup for Sabonis.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's looking solid. And then move it out
Yeah.
east, right?
Hmm.
Right into we have Bulls and the Heat. We'll start there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Bulls. I just think
Hmm.
that they're a well put together team. They did obviously make some off season and in season
Hmm.
trades with Levine going and what's his face DeRozan as
Yeah.
well this past off season. It's been a kind of a different look team, but the addition of Josh Giddey.
Yeah.
I think that he's been tremendous. Kobe White
Kobe White.
been
Yeah.
incredible.
Hmm.
All team hair too for that guy.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Vucevic as well. It's a
Hmm.
well put together team. It's young,
Hmm.
and I just think that in this game the Heat after the Jimmy Butler trade it just really hasn't been the same. I feel
Hmm.
like that team just doesn't seem
Hmm.
very good, even when they did have Jimmy this season.
Yeah.
For the ghost of Jimmy, really, the whole time he was there. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I have the Bulls winning this one. I think they just have a more energetic team. They have these young players that want to win, and then yeah, Giddy, Colby White, they're playing like superstars this year. So I think they take it. The Heat, they've been struggling. I think there's a lot of since Jimmy left. I don't think it has helped them. Um, like I said, Tyler Hero, nothing against him, but I don't think he's like that superstar to take a team deep into the playoffs. He's a great shooter though, and Bam, same thing. I don't think he's been able to step up since Jimmy left to be that superstar. So I think that's what they're missing. Because after that, their bench it's a little shaky. So they but you can't count them out because they do have a great head coach with Eric Spoelstra. He's
Yep.
taken teams, he knows what it takes to win. So I think they have the ability, but I feel like the Bulls will pull this one out, and just sort of bring Chicago back to sort of the playoffs, and then going to that next matchup, Magic versus Hawks. This one's a crazy one for me because I think it's a toss up. You know, Hawks have a great, solid young core, and so do the Magic. And I, I think if I have to pick, I'm gonna pick the Magic. I think Paolo is just gonna take this team far. I think Wendell Carter, they have the solid pieces around him. Hawks, but man, you just can't count out the Hawks against the Magic at least in this matchup. So Trey Young, dish leader, always passing it, creating shots. And like I say, they have two young stars, Zach Reiser, I think, and then Dyson Daniels. Great players. So I think them not having the playoff experience is probably going to hurt them a bit.
For sure. Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to go Magic for this game also. I just
Yeah.
think that they are a more well put together team. I think that the Hawks rely a ton on Trey Young, and I just think that this Magic team has a ton of depth.
Hmm.
They've had a lot of obvious draft pick
Hmm.
additions in the past, and really have really just built up quite the squad with Jalen Suggs.
Hmm.
Franz Wagner is
Wagner.
in, yeah, he's great. Scoring machine. Uh, had an injury earlier in the year, but came through
Hmm.
and has just been incredible. He's really good for daily fantasy as well. I
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
say he's a compiler. That dude's legit. Um, you mentioned Paolo,
Hmm.
obviously in absolute threat,
Hmm.
and a tremendous player as well. And Wendell Carter, yeah, they just have depth galore. I definitely see them taking this game and then moving on. And I I was kind of low-key thinking about them being a dark horse in the East, to be honest with you, John, just because of that depth and that young talent that they had, because they started off the season super strong.
Yeah.
And, I think that they kind of leveled out as the year went on, but
Hmm.
um, that it's really good. It's the best
Hmm.
Magic team we've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a solid team. I think they struggled once because Paolo did get injured, so he was out, and I think that's when the losing happened a little bit. It
Yep.
took him to come back. So, but yeah, they have a solid team. Um, but they're gonna go against the Celtics, and for
Ooh,
me, one of the favorites, it's still the Celtics. I have them up there. They're just the same team. Porzingis a lot better player this year than he was last year. And last year he made a big difference in the playoffs. Um, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, they're still great players. So, and then the role players for the Celtics have also stepped up. Peyton Pritchard, um, Derek White. So for me, one of my favorites is still the Celtics. Cavaliers, even though they had the best record in the East, I don't know if they're really that playoff team, you know, because I, I don't know. I don't want to count them out, but for some reason, I just don't know if they'll make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Because then if they win, you know, win that first round. They're going against Pacers or Bucks. I think if they play the Pacers, they could probably beat them. I think if they play the Bucks, that's going to be a tough challenge
Yep.
because Giannis and
Dame. But Dame's
yeah,
out. I
yeah,
still I believe with the
yeah,
aortic
yeah.
aneurysm, right?
Okay,
In his
yeah. So
calf.
he may not come back. So well, we'll see actually then, because yeah, they could make it past both the Pacers, Bucks. So yeah, it'll be
Giannis
interesting.
is legit though. I mean
Yeah.
that dude can carry a team. He's
Hmm.
LeBron-esque.
Yeah.
Um, he's just an absolute unit. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I too early on in the season I just kind of was saying that it just seems like another Celtics
Hmm.
NBA Finals victor.
Yeah.
I That team is just so well put together. And
Yeah.
then the way, like you mentioned, Peyton Pritchard, that game that he had several weeks back,
Yeah.
where I think he reined in like 11 threes, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken, along with Derek White, I believe. And no, I think he had Pritchard had 12. I think Derek White had 11 that game.
Yeah.
They just couldn't miss. Like just
Hmm.
some of the threes that they were putting up. Peyton Pritchard, I think he's in my opinion, like a top 10 ball handler in the league.
Hmm.
The dude can dribble like
Yeah.
nobody else. He's insanely good as a role player.
Hmm.
And I think he's made himself much more pronounced this season. So yeah, the Celtics, I think, are taking care of business against really
Hmm.
anybody that they play in that first round, obviously.
Yeah.
I think that they are a favorite out east. Cleveland is a really, really good team, have a lot
Hmm.
of really good bigs.
Yeah.
Arguably maybe just the best set of bigs in the league, but I just I don't know. I still take Boston over them. I just think
Yeah.
that between Tatum and Jalen, it,
Hmm.
it's too good. But
Yeah.
yeah, who I knew you mentioned like a favorite with the Celtics. Do you have a favorite that you just want to roll with out of the East?
Out of the East, I I don't know if I want to say this,
Yeah.
but it's sort of my dark horse from the East, the Knicks.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
The
I like it.
Knicks, they struggled at the beginning. I don't think they're the team they were last year, but Carl Anthony Towns, he's had a great season. He's a rebounding machine. He's a scoring machine. Brunson still playing well. Um, it seems like Mikal Bridges is finding his groove finally because he was struggling at the
Yeah.
beginning of the season, and then OG he stepped up too. Ever since that one time, what was it? He like ran into Anne Hathaway. He's been a different player or something.
Right.
Meeting these
Yeah.
superstars.
Starstruck. Yeah.
He's starstruck and he's trying to show off for someone who knows who's at Madison Square Garden that he's trying to
Right.
playing great ball. So, um, I feel like if the Knicks could put it together, I think that's the one team that could take down the Celtics and they can make it to the finals from the East.
Yeah. No, I like it. I I think
Like I
that's a
said,
really solid choice.
I don't know how many people are gonna like it. I think Knick fans are
Yeah.
they're gonna be on my side, but everybody else is
Oh,
gonna
they'll
think
be
I'm
pumped.
crazy.
Right. After all that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I gotta reference the Carl Anthony
Yeah.
Towns quote. After all that, that runs through my head every time I see
Uh,
it. But yeah, no, he's amazing. Just him being 7 feet tall and can shoot threes the
yeah.
way he does. Like tremendous player. He's a great addition. At first, I was kind of thinking like, I don't know what this dude's gonna be.
Hmm.
I didn't think it was a real great trade for some reason. I kind of thought Dante DiVincenzo was just a better fit with the Knicks,
Hmm.
and that says an awful lot. Same thing with Julius Randle. He was really
Hmm.
good for the Knicks for years and years, but
Yeah.
Knicks changed it up, maybe needing to because they
Hmm.
just weren't getting over that hump. They dealt with a lot of
Yeah.
injuries late in the season last year with Brunson going down,
Hmm.
and as long as they stay healthy, much like any of these teams,
Yeah.
they're an absolute threat. I think myself, I'm probably going to keep it as a favorite with the Boston Celtics. My wife Jen's going to kill me for saying that because she is extremely anti-Boston, especially Celtics, her being a Laker fan. So, but I'm just going to go with the gut feeling
Hmm.
on that one. But my
Yeah,
dark horse out of the East is actually going to be the Detroit Pistons.
that's another one I thought about.
Yeah, they've really turned it around. Obviously, this
Hmm.
is a far different team than what they were over the last couple of seasons, but it's just the addition of, Kid Cunningham really coming
Hmm.
into his own there,
Yeah.
having just healthy seasons under his belt. He's a triple double machine.
Hmm.
Um, he can put up points, any day of the week. Asar Thompson is incredible. And then you have really good bigs with Jalen Duren
Hmm.
and Ivy there, and then you have an enforcer with
Yeah,
Isaiah Stewart.
we
You
talked
know,
about him.
yeah, and I'd like, he's gonna have me glued to the TV with, let's see what happens because he's literally
Hmm.
Draymond of the East.
Yeah,
So let's see how that goes. But I just think that's a really well put together team and has the makings of a dark horse, but
yeah,
tough first matchup against the Knicks.
yeah,
So that's where it's difficult. You'd want obviously a team like the Pacers that seems a little bit
yeah,
less of a threat, to be honest. But
yeah.
is what it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, what do you think,
And
John?
yeah, I think that's going to be probably out of the East, probably the best first round matchup, Knicks versus Pistons. And I was going to
Yep.
say, I know, and I think we're going to have to sort of eat our words with one of our takes because one of our takes was the Knicks had a bad deal in the trade with the
Yeah.
Timberwolves. We said it was bad. We felt like pre- um they should have not made this trade. Cat should have stayed in Minnesota, vice versa. But it's looking well for both teams. So I think
Yep.
we'll see what happens. Um, but then the other thing, did you hear that the Pistons are limiting who they're selling tickets to?
Oh, yes. Yep. You sent me that,
Yeah.
and I thought that was weak. What do you
Yeah.
think, John?
I think the same thing. It's sort of what we talked about with the Padres when they were playing the Dodgers and not letting Dodger fans win it. It's showing that you're scared. They're showing weakness, and it's not a good look for the team. It's not a good look for, the players because now it's sort of like you're trying to make it home court advantage, and it's like if you don't have the fans, like you got to get through it.
Right. If anything, I what I feel like they should do, and I know that, not to get too deep into politics, they're evidently in the future they're going to limit some of these resale prices
Hmm.
and, kind of make it less of, an income-based
Yeah.
opportunity for some. But if you really want your fans to show out, make tickets really cheap,
Yeah.
you know, make
Make
it
them affordable.
affordable. Yeah, nobody wants to pay $500 sitting in the nosebleeds, for your team to, God knows what they're going to do, but
Hmm.
you know, make them hella cheap. Make them like $10. Then you'll get a turnout. And
Yeah.
then, or if you want to make it a little bit different, obviously open it all to the public because I think it's super weak when you make it regional. But I
Yeah.
think it's so dumb.
Yeah.
And, if anything, hey, prove that you're in a certain county over there in Detroit and you
Hmm.
get a discount.
Yeah.
You get that lower,
Hmm.
based ticket
Yeah.
price. And then you can make it more expensive for others. I don't know. As long as it's legal. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can limit, who's buying it, I'm pretty sure you can do a discount of
A
some sort
discount.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based off
I
like
think that's
zip
the better way to
codes.
do it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that seems better. And yeah, it's weak. And it's not the way you want to start the freaking playoffs.
No. It is
Stupid.
especially after your drought, how your last few seasons were, where you were the laughing stock of the NBA. Now you're a laughing stock for the first round because you're not selling tickets to anybody. Like you're limiting it. You're scared of having Knick fans take over, your stadium. So it's like it's not a great look. I hope no other teams try to think of this, make it like this. Like if you have a strong fan base, they'll come out, and if you don't have a strong fan base, you got to create it by winning and winning these hard games in your own home arena. That's probably still feels like an away game. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in Detroit fans altogether are really good though. I mean, they
yeah.
turn out great for the Lions.
Hmm.
They're relentless after all those decades of bad seasons.
Yeah.
And, same thing in baseball when the Tigers were getting to the World Series.
Yeah.
Same exact thing.
They were good. Yeah.
And in Red Wings hockey,
Hmm.
same thing there. That's an incredible,
Yeah.
franchise there too. So, they can turn out. Just don't don't do this. It's
Yeah.
so Padres. It's
Yeah.
stupid.
So,
It's gonna be the new slogan when teams do that.
yeah.
It's so Padres.
Padres.
Um, but moving out west, Sean, obviously our teams are both in this.
Hmm.
And I don't know, it's so weird looking at your Clippers logo, by the way.
It is.
It's interesting. But anyways, off topic. Who is give me a dark horse and a favorite that you have out west.
Um, my favorite, I think it's gonna be the Thunder. I think
Mhm.
they're the one solid team. They have Shea, one of the best scorers. They have a solid rotation, and then they got two great big guys. You know, Isaiah Hartenstein, he
Oh
really
yeah.
stepped it up. He's a great big, one of the best bigs I think playing next to the Cavs bigs. You know, even the Clippers big, Zubac. You know, another great one. But then they also have Chet Holmgren, who I still think one of the skinniest big guys, but if he could develop into like a Giannis, because Giannis was the same when he started, that guy could be dangerous down the line. So I have the Thunder as my favorite. I think they can make it all the way. My dark horse, it's a tough one because I see so many.
Hmm.
Um,
West
I
is
think,
stacked.
huh?
The West is stacked.
The West is
It's
stacked because it could go many different routes, but the I'm gonna go to. I'm gonna play favorites here. I'm gonna go with the Clippers. I think the
okay.
Clippers have developed something towards the end a lot that's really promising. You know, we have a solid bench, we have a solid rotation. Kawhi is playing, I'm knocking on wood right now, playing amazing. I think if he
Mhm.
stays healthy, Harden plays as great a plays a Harden way. Like I say, Zubac has been one of the best big guys in the league this year, averaging double doubles. He averaged his first triple double a few nights ago, and I think one of our dark horses is Norman Powell. He has to get back to the shooting he was doing before his injury, because before he got injured and was out for a few weeks, he was shooting lights out. And recently he has struggled from the field, but if Norman Powell could find that confidence, I think I think we are a very dangerous team, but our first round's already going to be tough. We're going against the Nuggets. We're going against the Joker, and the Joker, you've seen him. I think average a triple double for the season. So
First center ever.
for a center, so it's you can't count them out. Um, but I feel like if we could get past the Nuggets, we could get past the Thunder, and then, like I say, Lakers, I have to give it to them with Luca, LeBron. You can't count them out. But Minnesota's not going to be an easy. It's not going to be an easy ride for them. They're going to have challenges because they got some enforcers there. You know, um, Anthony, he, he's gonna show up. You
He's
know,
amazing in the playoffs.
he is.
Yeah.
You know,
He's a hell of
and,
a player.
yeah, and they've had some solid players, Dante, um, Jalen Daniels, he's been a solid player. So, and then like I say, the other team I was thinking about is the Rockets. For some reason, they are a solid team as well. So, and like you mentioned, the Warriors, if they get onto a good groove, that's a dangerous team. So it's the West is so much harder, I think, of a route to the finals where I think that's what's gonna hurt the team that makes it to the final in the West is in the West we're gonna have to fight to get there. Whereas in the East, it could be a little bit of a cakewalk for either the Celtics, Knicks, or the Cavs to make it. So and they're gonna be more refreshed than what any team coming out of the West is.
Completely agree. Yeah, no, it's so stacked. And you know, I too I'm not gonna play, I'm gonna play, kind of the same game you are, John. My dark horse is the Warriors. I think that we are an incredible seven seed.
Hmm.
And I think out of the possibilities of you know, that we could have played the Lakers or the Rockets.
Mhm.
I'm preferring the Rockets, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I think it's a team with less experience. Obviously, they're really, really, really good, and they're going to be
Mhm.
scary kind of moving forward for years to come because that's a young team as well. But I just think this year, I think that the Warriors that's a favorable
Mhm.
matchup for them.
Yeah.
I think that that is a winnable, game. But I Ime Udoka,
Mhm.
the coach of the Rockets,
Yeah.
with what he did with Boston too,
Yeah.
like he's a great coach. Like I know he
Yeah.
had some stuff go on in Boston,
Yeah.
but he's turned two franchises around.
Around.
Like Boston before him was kind
Yeah.
of modest,
Hmm.
it's so what he's done two different franchises is great, and I think that speaks volumes to who he is as a coach.
Hmm.
But also he can get into it,
Yeah.
with Steph
Yeah.
and Dre.
Yeah.
Steph had the funny joke of like, oh, he canceled, dinner reservations at his wife's restaurant, and that's what they're talking about, and he's upset about it. So, I think that that could be an interesting series
Hmm.
altogether. So, yeah, Warriors are pretty much my dark horse.
Hmm.
And then favorite wise, it's not really going to make me feel indifferent, with the firing of Mike Malone necessarily
Hmm.
because of, I guess the background of what was happening in that locker room.
Hmm.
But it, it's the Denver Nuggets, I
Hmm.
think are my favorite out there. OKC, I have tremendous respect for them. Just a part of me feels like they're still more just a regular season team.
Hmm.
I think that it's a team that is incredibly talented, but I just don't think that they have the experience yet of
Hmm.
playoff basketball. This is a very fresh team, in my opinion. So I think that they are a very deserving number one
Yeah.
seed, but I do think that Denver can take them down. Sorry, with
No,
the Clippers
it's okay.
playing Denver right off the
Hey,
bat.
I
That's
already
a
know it's a
pretty
tough one.
tough matchup. Yeah.
Uh,
But again, you mentioned it. Any series is really tough
hmm.
out west. So, it's you can play against Denver, you could play against OKC, the Lakers,
Hmm.
Timberwolves, Rockets.
Yeah.
None of those are fun. So,
Yeah.
regardless, that's who I kind of have. In the main thing is because I'm going to stand by it. I think Jokic is the MVP over
Hmm.
Shea. Shea is incredible, but I just think what Jokic has done for his team
Yeah.
makes him most valuable. I just
Hmm.
think that he fills the stat board in every single column,
Hmm.
and his instincts of, things that don't even register as stats,
Yeah.
he has an incredible feel for the game. So I in Jokic, I trust as a non-fan, just but yeah, no, that's kind of my feel. And then with the Lakers, the addition of Luka is obviously amazing. They have some really good role players there, but LeBron, he's old man.
Hmm.
He's pretty banged up. I think that, they're even talking that he might not even play,
Oh,
a
really?
portion of the playoffs. I'm not too sure because I was listening to morning radio today and they were kind of talking a little bit about lingering injuries. So,
Hmm.
I'm not too sure. I doubt it. I'm sure he's going to suit up and play, but
Yeah.
if there is injury stuff out there, God knows. But yeah, the West is stacked. That's going to be really tough. There's teams I didn't even talk about,
Hmm.
like the Clippers and the T-Wolves, who are
Yeah.
also really good teams and could make runs. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it'll be Clippers, Warriors in the Western Conference, and then
ooh,
we'll have some nice little
yeah,
conversation to have after that.
that'd be great. Yeah, bring
Yeah.
it to banter.
Bring in a banter, a little banter competition. But yeah, I'm excited for the playoffs. I think, we've talked about NBA being a little boring during the season, um, which I think ratings show. I haven't pulled up the ratings, but I think ratings weren't the best this season. But playoff time, everybody's watching. It's going to be interesting. These matchups are going to be great. So I'm excited for the next few weeks. It's bringing more attention to sports and it'll be fun. So, um, we'll see who does well. Like I say, um, LeBron, I think he needs to focus on the game. I don't know if you saw, he just released his Barbie doll, which I think it's another
Yeah.
conversation. But he shouldn't be focusing on Barbies right now. He got to be focusing on winning another chip because, like I said, the GOAT conversation I think is still up in the air.
So a TikTok of that today.
Yeah,
$74?
yeah.
My God. And then the running joke in the I went straight to the comments too, and people were like, how dare they price my king at $74? It just cracked
Oh,
me up.
that's
But hey,
hilarious.
props to him for continuing to get crazy endorsements year
Hmm.
after year. But man, $74, that's steep. That's kind of
It's
a random ass
steep.
number too.
It is. It is. But yeah, that's NBA playoffs. Like I said, we're excited about it. Good time of the year, more playoffs. I think hockey
Mhm.
playoffs are coming up soon, so we'll talk. Probably not
Ooh,
as
yeah.
knowledgeable about that, but still also fun to watch. Um,
Yep.
but talking about LeBron endorsing Barbie, we'll talk a little bit more about another type of endorsement and NIL with college and news from this week, the last few days. Um, Tennessee's quarterback Nico, not going to pronounce this last name because I'm going to butcher it, but Nico being sort of let go from Tennessee, and at first the reports were it was because he missed practice, he missed some morning meetings. But then there has been some rumors that his dad and agent were sort of shopping around other schools trying to get closer to that 4 million NIL deal compared to I think he was at like 2.2, 2.4 million. And I guess Tennessee found out and they weren't going to be playing this game, so they let him go. But what do you think of just all of this news, Tim? Because it's big news out of college and NIL, and we had the conversation last week about NIL sort of looking like it's going to get regulated soon. So, your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. To start off, I believe it's pronounced Nico I'm Olivia. And saying deuces, well, I guess being shown the door, I should say, with
Yeah.
Tennessee. Um, yeah, I think that this is crazy, but I also low-key think this can be sort of a trend. We talked about
Hmm.
cap, 20 and a half million. They're
Hmm.
going to stick to it with a lot of these caps. Obviously, they're going to have to. And this is just going to become the norm.
Yeah.
I literally think that, but it's kind of crazy that, that they're going out and shopping, for this. And to be honest with you, out of all the quarterbacks, Nico had a pretty whatever season. I
Hmm.
wasn't overly impressed. There's incredible hype around him, but I mean, he had a really bad game against Arkansas. It seems like
Hmm.
he struggled to throw more than
Yeah.
200 yards in a game at times. So, I kind of crazy for him to be
Hmm.
going out looking for that big of an increase when you're at Tennessee of all schools
Hmm.
and getting paid 2+ mil. Like, dude, what are you
Yeah.
doing? And a little bit more on that story of shopping around. I guess Dan Lanning,
Hmm.
Oregon head coach, was one of the whistleblowers
Yeah.
to Tennessee saying, "Hey, your guy is out here, making some phone calls with his pops. Just a heads up." And, I'm sure that's what kind of led into,
Hmm.
um, a lot of this, but, call him a snitch, whatever you want, but at least that's honesty.
Yeah.
And, I think that goes a long way.
Hmm.
I think that coaches kind of get it. Like, it's what's to be expected, but at the same time, you have a guy like Nico. Obviously, Dan doesn't seem overly enthused by him
Yeah.
himself. So he's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
wait, you want 4 mil?
Yeah.
Nah."
Yeah. I think if it was like an Archie Manning, he wouldn't have said anything and been like, yeah, come on
No,
over. We'll give you 6 mil, if it's that type of player. But
absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah, I, I hate to make this comparison, John, but I get kind of like DJ Ugalale vibes out of Nico. I just, like I said, struggles like a ton of hype around him,
hmm.
but just struggles to, just perform in
Hmm.
these big moments. And, but DJ is also a good reference because he made a ton in NIL deals,
Hmm.
and sponsorships, in his time also. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that it's going to be tough. Let's see where he ends up, but clearly
Yeah.
not with Tennessee any longer. But I, like DJ Khaled says, congratulations, you played yourself, because
Yeah.
I truly think he did.
Yeah. It's crazy to see, and I think it's something we expected. We talked about NIL, people going into transfer portal trying to get more money, but this is a little bit different because he was shopping around. And I've heard, reports that it wasn't even him doing it, it was his dad and his agent. And if that's the case, man, that's just bad advice for this kiddo because he is a kid, and that's the one thing we got to remember. Nico or yeah, he's a kid. He's barely probably 19, 20, and in my mind, yes, there is going to be a salary cap most likely coming with NIL, but it's that greediness. Like, why go for 4 million when you already made 2.4 one year? You're going to make another 2.4. And for these kids that have nothing when they go into it, that's life-changing money. So be grateful, be thankful because on top of it, you're going to Tennessee, getting a great education, getting that paid for, so it's like you can't be playing yourself out because I don't know who's gonna there's gonna be a team that picks him up. I'm hearing UCLA, USC. He might be coming back to SoCal because he is a Long Beach guy.
Mhm.
But what is the locker room gonna think with whichever team signs him or gets him because they're gonna know if he goes to my school, you know, it means you're paying him that $4+ million or whatever he wanted. And then people are going to be resentful. Some of these other star players that are already barely getting 2 million that probably have played better than him, you know, because like you said, his stats not the greatest this year. I think it was more hype. I think he was probably like one of the top ranked QBs, but didn't show it, so it's unfortunate, what he's doing, what's happening to him because I think it's going to hurt him in the long run. And I heard in some sports radio today, some podcasts as well. Um, it's not just going to affect him in college. Once he goes to the pros, it's going to affect him as well because this shows his character. It's about the money, not about the team. It's not about learning, how to be a better professional, how to be just, a leader. It's you're more just about it in it for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And then those NFL combine interviews are
Hmm.
intense. So,
Yeah.
it's how you're going to talk your way out of it.
Yeah.
It's like, you could go a direction where it's like, oh, no, that was all my dad. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, so you're relying on your dad to make the decisions for you.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're obviously younger, but the NFL is going to be asking those hard-hitting questions.
Hmm.
It's like, no, you got to make your own decisions here.
Yeah.
You're the quarterback. You're going to make the toughest decisions on the field.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it just it never it usually doesn't work out well when
Yeah.
it's over involved parents like this.
Yeah.
And it's just a tough look. And God knows where he's going to end up. Like you mentioned, maybe end up back in SoCal again. Uh, either UCLA or USC probably be a decent fit,
Hmm.
but again, I'd rather have 2.4 mil and be at
Hmm.
Tennessee than either of those programs at the moment. So,
Yeah.
he's missing out. And quite frankly, Tennessee, we've talked bucket list colleges in
Hmm.
stadiums in the past. That might be one. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
tremendous atmosphere.
It
That's
is.
that's top 10 in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, and like you mentioned, a lot of this is learning too.
Hmm.
It's yeah, we talked, maybe a difference maker to a lot of NIL money in the future is
Hmm.
going to be hiring these big names, Andrew Luck,
Yeah.
and like Steph Curry going to back to
Hmm.
Davidson, uh, you know, name Ron Rivera going to Cal.
Hmm.
It's a big deal, and I think that just the learning, you're already getting a scholarship plus that money,
Yeah.
use it to your benefit.
Yeah,
So,
no, no, for sure. And one of the things like that I saw today was Shannon Sharp sort of talking about it of like, when you sign a contract, and I think the same way, like when signing anything, it's like if you commit to a contract for a certain amount of money for a certain amount of years, you got to play through it. Just because you have two good seasons doesn't mean like, okay, I'm not going to play my last 2 years because I want more. Like you made a commitment, and for me, it's like once you make a commitment, you got to see it through because it's just that professionalism and just keeping your word for me at least. Like I said, yes, if I try to opt out, try to get more money, I'll be more financially successful, but then it just makes me look bad. So I liked what he said, and I also like what he said is like, but also don't come at me when trying to reduce my contract. It's like we made a commitment, you're paying me 5 million. I'm sticking to 5 million. I'm not going to take any less to try to help you get other players. Like that's not on me. That's on you. This is the commitment we made. And once we're done with the contract, then it's either we renegotiate something or I'm going to move on. And I think that's what, Nico should have done. It's just he made this commitment to Tennessee. Tennessee, probably not the prestigious school like when Peyton Manning was there, but still, it's in the SEC, like you mentioned, bucket list for stadiums to go to, and exposure you get for these pro teams, it's a lot better because if none of these big name schools pick him up, he's gonna have to go to a smaller school where we talked about it last week with NIL. You could sign they could sign a player for 20 million, but everybody around you is gonna suck, and you're not gonna show these scouts what potential you have, and you can't come up with the excuse like, well, I didn't have my wide receiver. I had no wide receivers. I had no QB or no running backs. That's not on them. That's on you. You made this decision, you made this choice to go there. So, um, hopefully it doesn't affect the kid, but it's unfortunate.
For sure. Yeah, I know, and a lot with, kind of moving slightly away from Nico, but kind of using his situation as an example, John. Do you think, because like a lot of these coaches, athletic directors, obviously there's been a lot of movement and, big names leaving like Nick Saban, so on and
Mhm.
so forth. But do you think we're going to see a complete overhaul of coaches and athletic directors, general managers, just across colleges, over with all of this new NIL stuff? Because quite frankly, a lot of these, folks that signed up to do this job,
Mhm.
it was obviously insanely different than what
Yeah.
it's turned into, and maybe they aren't the best fit for what it's turned into. Do you see
Yeah.
that coming?
Um, no, I don't. And the reason I don't see it coming is because I think all these coaches are on the same boat. You know,
Hmm.
what they just did right now, it's we're not going to hear people shopping around. We're making you an offer. If you want this offer, take it. If not, go find something else. But like if you're committed somewhere and you're trying to jump ship just because you want me to pay you more, it's like, no, that's not how it goes. So I don't I think it's just more how you recruit and how you use the money, especially when it once it gets cap limited, because it's like Oregon didn't sign you for a reason. Just because you're asking for more money and you have this big name doesn't mean they're going to sign you again. There's this next young star that they're going to sign for 4 mil that they probably have a lot more confidence in because they already saw you play one season and didn't have an outstanding season. So, I think these coaches are going to work together, even though they're always playing each other every week, to sort of support each other to keep their jobs and make it more of a fair playing field.
That makes total sense. Yeah, no, and I kind of had a similar thought where, yeah, there's some movement, but there's always going to be movement.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like the situation with Nico,
Yeah.
writing's kind of on the wall, depending on the player, of course.
Yeah.
They're going to have probably each other's
Mhm.
backs in certain situations, be
Yeah.
like, hey, dude, so and so's reaching out. I want
Yeah.
to talk to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting, but once that cap hits,
Mhm.
it's gonna be wild. It's gonna be
It's
interesting.
gonna be wild. It's gonna be interesting because, like I said, now you have to manage your money, you have to manage scholarships, all that stuff, and these players, I think they could get. X amount of money, like it's not going to happen that way, you know. And like you mentioned, you know, depending on the name, you know, I think the one that we saw this past year, Carson Beck going from Georgia to he went to
Miami.
Miami. You know, he went for 4 mil, but Carson Beck played out, you know, he has the stats to back it up and any team, you know, and he did it the right way. He went into the transfer portal first. He wasn't
Mhm.
shopping around, and from the transfer portal, he's like, okay, here I am. Who has the best offer? Whereas Nico, he didn't do that. He was trying to do it behind Tennessee's back. So I think if he would have gone into the transfer portal, he maybe could have gotten his 4 mil somewhere else, but it wouldn't have been this top school still.
Right. Yeah. No, completely agree. Yeah, there's certain ways to handle it, and
Mhm.
going behind the back when you're still committed to a program is not the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to read more into it, but do you think the 20 mil is per sport or is it per school? Because when thinking about it
Mm,
now, it's like, you know, a
it's got to be per
school
sport.
per sport, right? It probably should be.
That's what I'm thinking, because if you
Yeah.
think about it, like isn't Arch Manning do like 7 mil himself
I think
this
so.
upcoming year?
Yeah.
It's so if he's demanding that,
Yeah.
and you still want stud receivers and
Yeah.
running backs and
Yeah.
an O line there,
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to fork over a lot more, and then that leaves nothing to other sports. So
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's per sport, but again, that's an excellent question because it will vary per sport depending
Hmm.
on maybe income dependent.
Hmm.
Texas, although they have great, basketball and
Hmm.
baseball, the incomes are drastically different,
Yeah.
for those sports. So
Hmm.
maybe it will be income dependent, and
Hmm.
that's the route that they
Based
go.
on the sport. Yeah. So
Mhm.
so we'll see. But yeah, this NIL stuff, like I said, we talked about the salary cap last week and then this coming out. Um, you think we'll see more of this, or you think a lot of people that were probably thinking of doing the Nico thing of trying to shop around are sort of like, yeah, we're not gonna do this anymore. We gotta play it differently. And it just sucks for Nico because he got caught and he's being made an example of.
Yeah, and maybe it's one of those things. Maybe it was happening quite a bit, and then like the classroom cheater got caught, so we
Yeah.
all got to stop cheating now.
Yeah.
It's it could be one of those things, to be honest. And obviously, Nico's a really big name with a
Mhm.
really big program. And then, that's who you use to set the example. So
Yeah.
I think it'll nip it in the bud. I'm sure we'll still see it here and
Hmm.
there because, as history's proven, not everybody always learns. So, I think it could happen again.
Hmm.
But yeah, quite frankly, I'd like to see a lot of these athletes just bet on themselves a little bit more too,
Hmm.
though. Like, but not do it this way. Like, bet on
Yeah.
yourself, for example, of, take that 2 mil, play out of your mind this season,
Hmm.
turned into a huge NIL deal next year, or
Hmm.
use that as just draft stock in the
Yeah.
upcoming draft. That's a great way to bet on
Hmm.
yourself while still getting paid. But now you're not even with the team.
Yeah.
So, I think back to a guy like Jamar Chase. I think he's the
Yeah.
perfect example of bet on yourself.
Hmm.
And now he's turned it into the most lucrative
Yeah.
receiver of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. Like I said, NIL, I think there's going to be a lot more news coming around the next few weeks because football's starting to get, you know, amped up. Basketball's done. Draft is coming up and basketball's going to start the recruiting season, you know, or they've already started it. So you're going to see a lot of these names, you know, possibly making jumps depending on the program, depending on coaches, because coaching changes happen too. So, like I said, it's always interesting. College, it's always been interesting, but this NIL's just made it so juicy, so much news.
Oh
It's
yeah.
insane.
I completely agree. I'm enjoying it because then, with all this, we're getting video games back for it. So I think that's a huge,
Yeah.
plus that's not maybe talked about as much. Quick thing too before we move on to the
Mhm.
next topic, John. NCAA football 26. Did you see that they're going to make it open world part of it?
Are they
They
almost
are
like the NBA
like
type
like a 2K.
2K.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
that could be kind of cool,
Yeah.
but I just do it differently than 2K. I think 2K is a little drawn out, in my
Yeah.
opinion, because, yeah, I think they could do better. So,
Yeah.
interesting. We'll see how it comes. But
Hmm.
yep, seems like free
Yeah.
roam it's not only hitting TV shows,
TV.
John.
Yeah.
It's all over video games these days. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest we talked about it, biggest free roam game that's gonna come out this year, and they better let it come out this year. GTA.
Oh God, fall. Yeah, please. Can't get here soon enough.
Yeah.
Fall's going to be
So
glorious, John. Sorry,
better.
another quick thing. NFL season and GTA all in one.
Hmm.
It's going to be a good fall.
Yeah. Gotta
Can't wait.
gotta gotta take some vacation, save some time for that
Oh
that
yeah,
window.
you bet.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving forward. Next topic here, John. Like I mentioned, sounds of banter. We're bringing it back again, and this week we're going to talk Coachella.
Mhm.
We exchanged quite a few videos, I feel like, this past week, John, from TikTok, Insta.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I guess we'll kind of start at maybe the bad, and then we'll move our way into the good,
Hmm.
John. The bad kind of resulted a lot around what the feedback was on, I guess, setting up day one. Uh,
Hmm.
Evidently, it was, I think, triple digits, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Already getting super toasty out there, and people were sitting in their cars for hours on end. Guess
Hmm.
no access to restrooms. People are angry. People want to set up, get ready
Yeah.
for the day. Um, that part looked miserable. I saw people waiting hours in line at 8 a.m. for a shower.
Yes.
I saw another video where this guy's doing a tent tour, and the next door tent neighbor couldn't stop coughing every time
Oh
he
yeah.
started to try to talk again.
I
He
saw
would
that.
cough
I was
over.
cracking up the whole time. I was like,
Yeah.
oh man.
Oh, and then did you? I saw today he did a end of Coachella weekend post
Oh,
post
did
game
he?
conference with the guy and found him. And
That's
he's like,
hilarious.
yeah, and he's like, could you just give us a little cough? And then he gave him another cough, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's the guy. Uh, that was another thing, and then even feedback for like the tacos that I guess were 36
Hmm.
bucks. Um, what do you think, John? I guess
Yeah.
with this setup.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how a big event like this is still struggling on day one after doing this many years, especially like the car camping tent
Mhm.
thing. It's not like it's their first time doing it. So um, I read reports that it was just the people working the whole system that they were struggling, new people, new company. So if that's the case, I guess it makes sense. I hear a lot of people saying week one is probably the worst week to go at times because it's where they're sort of testing new systems, and if it isn't working, they're going back to the old system. So week two is probably a lot smoother to go to. Um, but yeah, I would have been extremely frustrated if that was me in the car in triple digit weather, sitting. I think I heard people up to 16 hours in their car
Oh,
trying to get to their camping spot. First of all, think about gas. You're just draining gas, and you probably have the car on because it's triple digits. You need some AC because if not, you're just going to be in a sauna in your car,
yep.
in the heat, and then I was thinking like, okay, how about these electrical cars like Teslas that were doing it?
Ooh,
Once you run out of batteries, what are you doing? They probably have
yeah.
some sort of solar power charging thing, but I was like, man, it's just so insane, and then the bathroom situation, I always heard it, they struggled with it, it's always so tough to, there's always lines and it's crazy. So not too surprised with that, but I've always heard week one's a great week to go, but it's also a tough week to go because there's a lot of mistakes that happen, and I think that's a lot of that bad with the car camping piece. The guy that dealt with the coughing, it sucks, I think, for him trying to make that video, but it's also it's the one thing I always think about, like if you're doing that car camping, it's cool when I see like 10 cars, they have this like little suite, of tents, but it's like you have neighbors and you have no idea who they are. And if they're coughing that
Yeah.
way, they're doing who knows what at night, like you're gonna have to deal with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, they might be on ayahuasca trips. You
It
never
may
know.
be.
Yeah. It's Coachella. You could see everything.
Hmm.
But on the camping topic, John,
Hmm.
the one thing I saw that I think the way I do it, and I've already talked with Jen about this, just like, those little fantasy ideas that you
Hmm.
have. It was why the hell not just buy like a Mercedes Sprinter,
Hmm.
and travel the country with it. And it's roomy, but it's also more like
Yeah.
compact for, a van style. I think that looks like the way to do it. I
Hmm.
saw one guy's video of his setup. He
Yeah.
had plenty of space. There's other sprinters next to him. He had like the overhang, pulled
Hmm.
out. He had a couple lawn chairs, looked like a mini grill that extended out from the sprinter.
Yeah.
And then he showed like an interior tour where it's air conditioned
Yeah.
and stretched his arms out all the way across his bed, had a TV in there, a stove, a bathroom.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, that's probably the way to do it. And
Yeah.
then I'm sure that there's some type of shower, attachment that he could
Hmm.
use. Yeah, there's ways to kind of make it maybe, enjoyable in a sense like that, but then you're not roughing it at,
Hmm.
Coachella necessarily.
Yeah.
Um, but cool idea.
Hmm.
I think that's interesting. But yeah, no, the tenting looked kind of wild. And then, speaking of wild, also the taco prices seemed a little
Oh
wild.
yeah.
I saw people are doing food reviews. Obviously, we're foodies over here,
Yes.
and talked about Dodger Stadium food stuff like that. But these tacos, I would probably still buy them for $36 just to see what
Hmm.
they're all about. But I think you get three,
Hmm.
$12 a taco, and then I don't even know if you get like rice or anything on the
No,
side.
you don't.
Yeah, it's just straight taco. And then one of them, it kind of looked, it looked a little bit more well put together than a Jack in the
Hmm.
Box taco, but like amount of ingredients inside the
Hmm.
taco looked Jack in the Box-esque.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, hella disappointing. But what do you think, John,
It
about that?
it's crazy, and I would say it's probably like the one thing Coachella has to sort of try to regulate, because it isn't the first year prices have been like that. I've always seen every year at Coachella, food prices are insane, and we've talked about it. Any type of events like this, you're already paying so much to go to it.
Mhm.
Make the food affordable, make it manageable to make it enjoyable for people, because if not, you're gonna get bad reviews. People aren't gonna eat, because it's like they already put so much money towards these tickets for Coachella, because it's not an easy buy-in. So, and if you're gonna make it that expensive, make it a big old meal. Don't make it just three tacos. Make it tacos, rice, beans, and a drink. Something
Yep.
like that, And I know a lot of these companies that go there to do that, they're trying to make money. I get it, but $36, that's for me, it's just highway robbery. And like I say, it's the same thing we've talked about with stadiums. Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the New Orleans Saints, they're doing it right with their concessions prices, making it affordable for families, make it affordable for people, because a lot of these people that are going, they're camping in their tents, they're struggling to just get there. Make food affordable to make your event more enjoyable the whole night.
Completely agree. I think the Phoenix Suns, right, did something similar
I think so,
with
yeah.
their concessions. Shout out Rory McIlroy with the Masters win.
Hmm.
Augusta, same exact thing. Like
Yeah.
egg salad sandwich, I think is like $3 there.
Yeah.
It's all the items are super famous, but yeah, at Coachella, I think I saw another drink review of somebody bought like a
Oh yeah.
strawberry lemonade and it was like $14,
Yeah.
$17, something outrageous. And they're like, it's good, but it's like probably it tasted good because it's 100 degrees outside and you're
Yeah.
finally able to enjoy something on ice.
Hmm.
So, that's another thing. And, another statistics that, we're talking about, making things more affordable once you're in because
Hmm.
it's pricey. I read an article that said I think over half of Coachella attendees are on a ticket payment plan.
Hmm.
And people were kind of making a joke of, it's obviously people, I mean, it's 2025. Everybody's kind of on
Yeah.
a budget to an extent these days. can't escape a grocery store for less than $100.
Yeah.
But it's the running joke with that too is like, yeah, and they're not gonna, make the rest of their payments afterwards,
Yeah.
jokes on Coachella. But it's that's another thought too. It just
Mhm.
really hits home. It's like people are going to great lengths, sitting 16 hours in 100-degree weather in their car
Mhm.
to wait for a camping spot. Make something affordable out of this whole
Yeah.
thing. They're
Mhm.
going through a ton to get there, and once they're there, they obviously want to enjoy
Mhm.
it. But you turn around, you're like, ah, more money to throw at this thing.
Yeah.
So, that's a rough look, especially for the quality, of what it looked like. I say I would have bought it, but maybe if I stared at somebody's tacos in line, I would have been like, I'd be hella
I
hungry.
yeah, that's the thing. It's like you would have to be hungry. Like I think and I think that's why they made those camping sections because I think, and like I said, I've never been to Coachella. I don't know the way it goes, but I think you could go in and out. So it's like,
Yep.
okay, I'm hungry. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna go back to my tent, cook whatever food I have there to not spend the $36. But like I say, some people just to get that tent because it's an addition to your full price ticket, which probably is another payment plan you're on, you know, you're spending so much. And like I say, there might be people going into debt just trying to get to this event to be part of history, to experience it. So find make food affordable because like I said, that's the universal thing. That's what makes food we talk about it. We're foodies. We love food, but food makes you happy. Food
Yep.
just fills you up, and there's this different feeling you get when you're full compared to being in that mosh pit, hungry, thirsty. You're gonna be miserable. Someone bumps into you, you're gonna want to get in a fight because you're already pissed off that you couldn't eat all day. Whereas if you're full, you're gonna be like, "Oh, it's okay. It's all good. Let me enjoy it." So I think there will be a lot of benefits to making food more affordable.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, they need to. And then kind of little last side thought here for me with Coachella weekend, John. The TikToks I really look forward to are the ones where people are sneaking in and how easy they say it is. And
Yeah.
like this guy, I guess he's from San Diego. I saw him. I guess there's different stages of access. I think you go
Mhm.
through a security checkpoint and then you go through the VIP area. And then after the VIP, they check your wristbands and you finally get in. But he was like, yeah, stage one, I don't even know what that was. Like that was hardly a check. And then it's like that was like nothing. And then he goes to stage two and he's like, yep, no wristband, anything. He was wearing a wristband, I think from a like 2023
Mm.
like golf event or something like that. Like it was super, distant, just a random wristband.
Yeah.
But made his way in. And then second to that, another video of people sneaking in alcohol. Um, I saw one guy take a water bottle full of whatever, and he like chucked it over the ticket tent over to the other side, and then he was planning on picking it up afterwards. And then that was the way he snuck it in. He just quickly chucked it over, and then
Yeah.
I guess one of the security guys saw him do it and just kind of laughed and didn't snitch on him.
Yeah.
But
Creative.
yeah,
Creative.
it's creative indeed. Hopefully it didn't hit anybody. But if it did, they might have picked it up themselves and ran away with it.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's Coachella weekend. It's good for social media. It's
Good,
funny.
good for social media, and I think there was also some good from it.
Yep.
I think you shared the video, the one video I liked. And like I say, I'm gonna say this, or it might cause controversy. People might hate me, but they did T-Pain dirty, and he should have been main stage prime time.
Yep.
That guy, nothing like against Lady Gaga. Love Lady Gaga's music. I think she had a awesome performance. I saw a lot of the highlights of it and heard a lot of it. Great.
Oh yeah.
But man, T-Pain, this guy's a classic and I think I read that it was one of the most packed, shows or
Yep.
performances of the day. And I'm like, yeah, I would be wanting to get front row to T-Pain, hearing the bartender song, all those.
Oh yeah.
It's like, man, T-Pain, give him more credit, man. Don't be putting him too early. You got to put him at the night. That light show he probably could have had would have been amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, you did that light fog on the
Yeah.
stage even. Yeah, no, T-Pain, he's just so he gives such good flashbacks, at least in my life.
Mhm.
He was really popular when I was still in high school, like senior, junior year.
Yeah.
Always rocked his music. T-Pain's amazing and hell of a voice. Obviously, he's known for his auto tune,
Mhm.
but the dude just,
Yeah.
to this day, an incredible voice, has hit after hit,
Yeah.
still doing it. He's big on social media. He seems like a really down-to-earth
Yeah.
person. But like I said, when I sent you that video, John, I'm like, dude, that's 100% would have been a must of the
Yeah.
weekend for me.
Yeah. No, for sure. What's also cool about T-Pain, I think he's a gamer. I think he has his like own little
Oh
gaming
yeah.
channel. He does a lot of gaming, so I think that's why I
Nice.
also like him a lot. But I also think a lot of great performances. I think, quite a few surprises. Lady Gaga, I think she killed it. Um, Charlie XCX bringing out Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish just big pop star. Everybody loves her. Great music
Yep.
too. So, like I say, those surprises like that. I forgot who it was. Bernie Sanders making an appearance. I don't know why I thought it was amazing. I just thought it was so
Yeah,
cool, even though I have no idea why it was him that
super
did it.
random. Yeah,
It's super random, but awesome to sort of see. So I think that was some of the good I saw.
for
Anything
sure.
else you saw?
Travis Scott, right?
Hmm.
Didn't he have the most expensive set of all
I
time
think
for
so.
Coachella? I think it was
Yeah.
he spent 11, $12 million, something like that
Hmm.
on the set. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't see any of his set. I just know that obviously for good and bad, he's had some really wild
Yeah.
concerts. So I'm sure it was amazing. I'm sure that was a really cool one. But yeah, that was the other thing that kind of hit home there. And then, kind of off the grid, seeing Lady Gaga, she was eating In-N-Out Burger afterwards.
Yeah, I saw.
That was pretty cool. It's like you just put on one of the greatest shows ever, and you're just casually, waiting for your burger.
Yeah.
Everybody loves In-N-Out. And
Yeah.
then and then Justin Bieber, dude was just mingled within the crowd. It seemed like,
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
Kid Leroy and his GF.
Yeah.
What's her got shoes is on us now. Blanking on her name, but yeah, he was just
Hmm.
there. At least he's getting out and about.
Yeah.
People were kind of making fun of his pants, though. I think that they're kind of a little bit parachutish. But yeah, he's out there doing his thing.
Yeah.
Seemed happy. But yeah, kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it was cool. I also enjoyed the one's music I listened to a lot from Coachella was a lot of the EDM music, and I think EDM is making this big comeback. I think they've always been relevant, but they've fallen by the wayside, and now there's a lot of new artists coming out, and I think it's sort of building that EDM community back up. The old EDMers are coming out, new ones getting developed, listening to old songs, calling them classic EDM, but for us, it's normal EDM. It's not classics. So
Yeah,
I really enjoyed a lot of the EDM sets that I did watch.
yeah, it's awesome. I gotta look at more of those because yeah, me too. I'm dying for more EDM.
Hmm.
It's been a minute
Yeah,
since we've had Calvin Harris has come out and David
yeah.
Guetta or
Hmm.
Zed even. So
Zed
um
was there. His
oh
set
great.
was pretty cool.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I feel like he's normally in attendance for that. So
Hmm.
that's great. Yeah, big fan of
Yeah,
Zed.
yeah,
Definitely got to check out his set.
yeah,
That would have been
yeah.
another
But
must.
yeah, that
Must.
would have been another must. But yeah, overall Coachella, like I say, hey, there's always good, there's always bad. Week one. Let's see how week two goes. Let's see if they improve it. I hope they do. But I think, like we talked about, the biggest I think change Coachella could sort of what I'll say is regulate because I don't think they control it all. Is regulate the food prices, the alcohol, the drink prices. Like alcohol, yeah, make it a little bit more expensive because it's alcohol. But like
Yeah,
water, sodas, things for people to stay hydrated in 100+ degree weather, make it more affordable. I think if you do that, people there's going to be a lot more positives about your event than negatives. So,
for sure. Yeah, I think everybody loves that. I mean, it's like you can't really find that these days anywhere.
yeah.
So yeah, make it affordable.
Yeah.
Something affordable. Good
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Coachella. Like I say, good event. We'll see week two. A lot of same performances, but new people showing up, new celebs, new drama, new bad, good. Um, and then one of our last topics, Blue Origin. So this is, I think it just happened today, actually, huh?
It
Um,
was.
so this is part of um Amazon. I don't, is it Amazon
Yeah.
or Jeff Bezos space like exploration? And it was the first all-female flight launched to the edge of space. It had Gail King, Katy Perry, Lauren Sanchez. Um, and I think it is some history, but I also think a lot of people probably have thoughts about this, feelings about it. I watched one video of it taking off. First thing, the space shuttle that they created, they can make it more interesting because it looks a little inappropriate. I don't know if you saw it that way. When I saw it, I was like, what? It reminds me of like an Austin Powers film
I'm
when
seeing that now.
when you see it. It reminds me of something Austin Powers would do going into the
Got
most inappropriate section
a
ever.
nice rounded top.
Yes. But also some of that video, for some reason, when I saw it, I was like, just looks fake. Some of it at times just looked AI. Some of the angles, I was like, is this actually real? And then it seems like it is. But first, what do you think of it, Tim? And then I think the big question I have is, do you actually consider this space travel? Because they were only a few miles above that line that they consider space, and they were only there for maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's tough to make that judgment. A lot in I guess I'll start off with, you know, the capsule that they're in. A lot of I guess the running thing with the comments I was seeing, kind of goes to like that AI thing that we talked about,
Hmm.
with the landing that recently happened
Hmm.
from the International Space Station. The AI looked to a lot of people were saying like they didn't even go anywhere, and it was
Yeah.
just all AI. And then there's ways to manipulate it these days. Like there's those flights where all they do is just create a ton of turbulence,
Hmm.
and they call it kind of like literally like a vomit tube because evidently it makes you super sick. I, for one, can never do it. I have terrible motion sickness.
Yeah.
But that's certainly a way to manipulate the, lack of gravity because you're constantly going up and down and the G forces behind it. But, you know, yeah, I guess they're reaching the edge of space. It's truly not space travel, in my opinion. You're definitely going to higher altitudes, but you're
Hmm.
not literally there in space. It's
Hmm.
a little different, but I guess that's the safest way because it's kind of like there's nobody really controlling it minus, remotely, right?
Yeah.
So, it's yeah, I guess you could just call it a rich way of experiencing zero gravity at
Yeah.
the edge, and taking your jet a little bit higher than normal.
Hmm.
And then, in addition to that, I think the all-female group is great.
Hmm.
Uh, wasn't expecting to see Katy Perry doing space travel though. I
Yeah.
thought that kind of threw me off. Lauren Sanchez, I understand obviously Bezos's soon-to-be wife, right?
Yeah.
They're not
Hmm.
married yet, but almost. And Gail King, I believe she's a journalist
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
TV,
Yeah.
right?
TV.
So
Yeah.
very cool. I think that's incredible.
Hmm.
But yeah, certain portions kind of give you the AI feel. Other portions make it feel like Austin Powers that, the spaceship altogether is it was funny. And then truly iconic. To see Jeff Bezos nearly face plant, trying to get to Lauren at the end. That was certainly something that cracked me up earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, it's cool. It's the start of maybe something more,
Hmm.
doing stuff like this. And, I think that's really interesting too, John. These billionaires obviously, in it of itself have just immense fortune, and
Hmm.
they all just seem to want to go to space.
Hmm.
Is that, say you had billions of dollars, Sean, is space maybe at the top of your bucket list, you think?
No. Uh, I wouldn't waste money on it. It would be something I'd be interested in, but I think the way I see it is I'm just not too confident in those machines and spaceships because I've seen it go bad. I think one example is an RIP to the people that passed away. That one submarine that went to go see the Titanic,
Oh,
billionaires
Titan.
go, yeah, go did that because they want to see the Titanic. It's something historic, something nobody really can, but accidents can happen, and that's what I was thinking with this. I'm like, thank God everything worked out well because if this didn't go well, it would have been the most disastrous accident to happen in NASA, and it would push us back so much of all the progress we've made with space travel and just, this. So I wouldn't if I was a billionaire, just because there's still so much unknown. I would need to sort of see a sort of travel space for many years, develop a colony in space before I really decide, like, okay, I feel confident, Star Trek, having something like that, Starfleet happening, I'd be like, okay, I'm ready to go into space. But at the moment, and I don't think I would have spent that type of money, even though it would have been awesome. I think experiencing that, seeing planet Earth from even, the edges of space would be awesome.
For sure. Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. I'd rather stick a GoPro to like a, RC sized rocket and
Yeah.
shoot that into the air and see what
Hmm.
happens and just kind of visualize it. But yeah, I'm sure that these billionaires are kind of thinking like, oh, I've achieved everything I can here
Yeah.
on Earth. What's the next best thing? Not the deep ocean, but let's go up into space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's the you know what they all I guess
Hmm.
want to do. Interesting. It could be, we're on the verge of something more, but I too wouldn't really consider doing any of this unless we have like, flights to and from space that
Hmm.
are, the same frequency as taking a plane from LA
Hmm.
to New York.
Yeah.
It would take a lot, and
Hmm.
we'd have to have Star Wars or something like real life Star
Yeah.
Wars to do it.
We would have to. Yeah. But it was crazy. Like I say, I think all female. It's pretty cool. They had some people that, were part of NASA. So, like I say, they had some experts up there. It wasn't just a pile full of celebrities, billionaires. Um, and like I say, maybe this, like you say, gets us ready for the next steps of what happens. But it's also like when the capsule touched down, it's crazy. It's just parachutes. There's still probably some, mechanical programming that they're controlling. But compared to the people from outer space that were stuck there, they landed in the ocean. These people landed in the desert and their capsule was intact, where I would think it wouldn't have landed that safely. It's just so crazy for me to think.
Yeah, and then you're out in the desert, like
Yeah.
there's big ass rocks out there,
Uh,
cactus that you might mow down, like,
yeah.
that might not always be like a graceful landing, obviously, either.
Hmm.
You're relying on parachutes to, really hone you
Yeah.
in very gently, but yeah, odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another questionable side to this, right? Where,
Yeah.
is AI manipulating a lot of this also? And
Hmm.
um, didn't Bezos run right up to it? And didn't he low-key get kind of in trouble for running up to it too soon or trying to open something?
I think so.
Was it because of the heat on the capsule, you think? What?
It could be because you can't open it that soon, and like I said, this is where it comes down to Bezos probably, if it wasn't real, Bezos knew he could probably go to it and there was no issues, but then it's like all the debunkers are going to be like, why is he touching it so quickly after, landing on Earth? And like I say, I think when we had our last the segment when we discussed the space shuttle, whatever, that came down landing in the ocean, the ocean probably would cool down, the capsule, but landing in the desert, you're landing in the heat. There's no ocean to cool down this
Yep.
thing that just came from outside of our atmosphere down. Like, I don't even think you want to touch it for quite a while. You need to have protective gear on because who knows what's in space. So,
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And then, maybe it's a depressurization thing
yeah,
that's, accompanied with that too. But yeah, I for one would think that the heat would be a factor. And then maybe get this because he tripped after it landed, right? Like
yeah,
that
I
wasn't
think so.
before. And he's just, yeah. So yeah. Because the capsule had detached from the
Yeah,
rocket. So, yeah, him running up to it. What if he just tripped on purpose to draw attention to a ridiculous looking trip,
maybe.
instead of like, oh
It
crap, I
could
forgot
be.
I shouldn't touch it this soon. It's too obvious. It
Yeah,
was fake. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. See,
It
conspiracy theories are already circulating.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be until someone could actually prove it. Because, like I say, when I still even look at screenshots of the rocket going up, like it just looks so fake. Just the fire, like the the fire coming from the bottom of it. I'm like, it looks like something I make, for our videos. Like it just looks like I attached, some flames
Yeah.
behind it, and the way it shows mission and everything. I'm like, it's just so perfect for a takeoff that you didn't even know how it was gonna go, you know. And then, like I said, just the shape of it just looks totally off, a little weird, and it just
Imagine,
looks AI.
imagine they did the rockets on both sides instead. Then it would
That,
just,
that, that,
yeah,
yeah.
it would have really taken the masterpiece home there.
Yeah.
Too funny, man. And then another thing I'm going to be looking at too is camera angles of all of this
Hmm.
too. It's like, you're getting some, drones can only go so high. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, I see the little dust cloud here of when it landed, and yeah, hey, they found just that patch of land
Yeah.
out in the desert that just was perfect,
Yeah.
evidently, you know.
Yeah. I'm reading some comments on people's website. Some people are saying it's just a big waste of money. Sanchez should take a lesson from Jeff Bezos' ex-wife and learn to do some real good with her money. Or should I say his money? Alas, I don't think she is smart enough. That's fucked up. It's fucked up.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, and then
That's
I completely agree. It's terrible for the environment. Space travel for 11 minutes is ridiculous at the cost of the engines releasing trace gases into the upper atmosphere that contribute to the ozone depletion, as well as particles of soot. So there's going to be a lot of people against it, a lot of people that are for it. Like I say, I think like we discussed, it could bring some good to future space travel if they got some data out of this, and if it just wasn't for rich billionaires to sort of experience zero gravity for 3 minutes and see the Earth. Um, I hope there's something behind this more than just that, but I think it was just that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that it's just rich billionaires
Hmm.
having fun with his money. And that kind of brings me to another point that I read with Lauren Sanchez where she's like, "Yeah, you're up there and obviously we have states in the United States and we're all, separated by those lines." It's like, girl, those lines ain't in person. Like it's only on
You
the
know,
fucking map. What the fuck? And
uh,
then she's all like, yeah, but once you're up there, we're all just one. It's like we are down here too, Yeah, there is states, but it all blends. And
it's
then people were commenting to her comments saying that they're just kind of like, like billionaire talking
mm,
comments. And they're like, yeah, I'm watching this on my 30-minute break at work.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, it is.
girl,
We
like
all
you're,
we yeah.
yeah, your vision of one is different.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we're not all one because we don't got that money. We can't do that. We still got to work our 9 to 5s, pay bills. We
Yep.
can't be traveling, going into space, doing all this stuff that she does. So
Right.
it, it, if they want to do something good, Jeff Bezos has a ridiculous amount of money that he could make a lot of changes. But I think let's be real, we know nothing's really going to change with that.
And it's funny, he does stuff like this, but then of course makes all of his delivery drivers, if like do, scans of damage on their vehicles after they
Oh
return home.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, but spend millions upon millions to
yeah,
send your fiance and some friends, up to space. Yeah.
for 11 minutes.
Yeah, for 11 minutes.
You know.
But God forbid, your worker,
Mhm.
your delivery person who is, boots on the ground for you,
Mhm.
comes back with a scratch on your
Yeah.
truck. Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So, like I said, I hope there's some good from it. I doubt it,
Mhm.
but let's wait to sort of hear more. But overall, cool. Like I said, I'm just curious to see more because it just happened today on Monday. I know there's going to be more coming out. I think there's going to be more people sort of watching different angles and sort of trying to debunk it. Um, but
Yep.
yeah, like I say, we love the space talk. We love these controversies, AI stuff. We love space. So good, good way to bring space back into some of our conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love it. It's an endless topic, just like space is itself.
It
So,
is.
um, you know, it's great. We'll continue to bring it up.
Yeah, no, for sure. We'll continue to bring it up, but that's all we have for this week. Anything else, Tim? There isn't much more, that's happened. I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of stuff that's happened, but I think for today, I think we had some good topics, good banter, good thoughts, and as always, thank you to everybody that listened to us. If you've gone to just a few chapters, hopefully you've enjoyed those topics that you were interested in hearing us chit chat about. Like I say, we are yappers. We could go on forever.
Oh yeah.
Um, and as always, if you haven't subscribed to YouTube, please hit that subscribe button below. Hit that bell button to get alerted whenever we put out new clips, shorts to give you previews of what our conversations are, our topics, and also for our full videos. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts and now on Spotify as well, hit that follow button. So we're on Spotify now, expanding a little
Woo.
bit more. Get those alerts when new episodes are released. And as always, leave your comments, leave your thoughts, you leave your takes. We enjoy that conversation. I think one of the good takes we saw this, or one of the comments from one of our takes this week that I think we both didn't think about when we had the conversation. Cal Ripken, his record, I don't think that might get broken. Consecutive games, um, the way the game is now, it's it's going to be hard for it to happen. So thank you to that commenter for sharing that. Because like I said, I don't think we thought about it in the moment, but totally valid point that Cal Ripken's record might stay forever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Chris B, 8371, Cal Rickman Jr., short and sweet. That's exactly, the
Hmm.
comment that we're looking for because it's one that we didn't think of. But with load management, I
Yeah.
think it's super valid. So,
Yeah.
great comment. Again, we always enjoy those comments and feedback, on not just YouTube, but we're on TikTok. We got a lot of great feedback on our banter
Hmm.
gossip topics last week. We'll continue to have those going forward as well.
Hmm.
And then also, on Apple Podcasts, please drop us a review on there too. It's
Hmm.
like any other Google Yelp rating.
Hmm.
5 stars is obviously what we achieve for.
Yeah.
But feel free because we love the input, good or
Hmm.
bad. We all use it constructively. So, be sure to do that. It's a huge help too. So thank you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great week. It's Easter week, so enjoy the holidays with friends, family. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Peace.